Oh, hey Matt, thanks so much for jumping on the show today. I want to talk about what it's like to be an actor, living in LA, shooting film, TV, movies, really the behind the scenes for all of us that just watch the things and don't do the things. I want to start with this. How did you first get into acting, and or was there like a particular moment that you're like, I think I could actually pursue this like as a career?
Absolutely. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for having me on your show today. It's always a blast to talk kind of about my origin story, so to speak. And yeah, for me, acting has definitely always been something that's boiled in my blood. I feel like it's something that I was born into, that was born inside me. I always kind of, get asked the question like, when did you get the bug? I feel like the bug was there, ever since I can remember. And I think it really just comes down to just the kind of kid I was growing up in rural Virginia. Not really needing a lot of toys, just really needing my own creativity, my own imagination. The relationships that I've garnered through the process of acting have been some of the most rewarding. I just think that artists, I think the world of artists, they hold so much space for each other and they're just my people. So I feel like for me, I was that kid, like just kind of creating new and exciting adventures and stories in my own head growing up. And, then I found my way to the local theaters as soon as I could. I think my first theater gig was at 4 years old, so like, as I was standing, running around, I was on the theater stage. And again, like it really just brought me so much joy. And I think, through doing it as a kid, I think I realized the impact that it can have on people. Good stories can really make people feel, be in touch with their good emotions, I say. And I think that that impact really made an impact on me when I had my first paying gig, which was in dinner theater. And dinner theater is a very humbling experience because you're on stage, you're one of the main characters of the show or whatever, and then you get off stage and you're clearing plates and you're refilling drinks. And so, it was this moment where this lady came up to me, this older lady at the end of the night, and I was playing Little Patrick and Mame, which is kind of like a mother-son dynamic show. And she came up to me, I think I might have even been serving her table, and she said, Matt, I really wanted to thank you tonight. Your performance really taught me that I need to make an effort to be closer to my son. And, I was 14 or 15 years old at the time, and I was just like, it was just kind of like that aha moment where I was like, oh wow, that's the power in what we do. And then from that I moved to New York City, and honestly, Dylan, I've never looked back.
So, well, just want to follow up with one thing. You said 4 years old. That's pretty young. Was it like a parent? Was it just you? Hey, hey, take me to this audition. I want to get into this. Like, how did you start that?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely need support from, your parents. You can't drive yourself to the theater. So,
Right.
it was really primarily my mom who would do a lot of the, trucking me to the auditions and prepping me and making sure I got there on time. And just really getting me into voice lessons, getting me into choir, getting me into anything that could keep me creative. Even though I have zero connections to anything related to the industry at large, both of my parents are artists of different types of artists. My mom is a dancer and a choreographer, and she owned a dance studio growing up, and so I was around a lot of dance. And my father is a sensei. He's a martial artist, and he's had his dojo in the same spot for many, many decades now in Front Royal, Virginia, the Front Royal Karate Club. And so I think having the dynamic of two artists growing up in Virginia really just kind of gave me like that mentality towards art, and
Yeah.
whatever that would be. And for me, it just felt like storytelling. I just really liked inhabiting myself into different characters and kind of learning about myself in the process. I just feel like there's nothing more exciting in the world than to be an actor for me.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think, the average person just really has no, I can't really fully appreciate the competitiveness of the industry. I think people just think like, oh, if someone's on TV, film, they just happen to get lucky. And they don't realize there's so many people trying to get after this and the training and the work and the effort, even to get like one line in something is a lot of work. How old were you when you moved to New York City? And like, what was the plan when you moved out there? What did you hope was going to happen?
Yeah, no, I mean, I always say that I feel like when I moved back to New York City, it was like I was moving back home because both of
Mm,
my parents, even though I was raised in Virginia, were both originally born in New York City. And so, I got to move back home. I always say this, I'm a grandma's boy. I got to move back with my grandma on 79th and Broadway. And it was really just one of those times where my aunt was moving out of the apartment. Grandma was going to be all alone. And it was just
mm,
this perfect thing where like we got to be roomies, for some really formative years of my life that I'll always just be so fond of because, I was one of those rare kids that got to come home every night and come home,
right.
and feel safe and feel protected by, my grandma. And, it was really just incredible because it really gave me the ability to stretch my wings, but be safe at the same time and really make sure that I could really stay on my path and not divert. Because I mean, you can get off your path very easily in a big city, and I saw examples of that, right? So for me, it was really just because I had this safe place to come home to, just taking advantage of everything that I could. I made as much money as I could, bartending, but a lot of it I would just spend right back into training. My like mentality was like just be learning as much as you can. You've got this opportunity to be in the city around, the best artists in the world. Like just take advantage of it however you can. And for me, I did that in so many ways. I, paid for acting classes outside of my college where I was getting an acting degree. So I was just, taking advantage of that. I found Terry Schreiber, who actually got like actors like Edward Norton their start and was just a grandfather to me. And, just I got to study with him for over 2 years, which was just really formative for me. I mean, just a true lover of actors. I got to study with great voice teachers like Ron Shetler, who had Shetler Studios in Midtown, who really taught me my vocal mechanism and how to use that and, how to manipulate it or really tailor it towards a specific character. Because for Broadway, I mean, there's so many different genres of singing that, you're kind of constantly relearning how to shape your voice around the character, whether it be pop or legit or, kind of more rock ballad or whatever it is. So that was really formative for me. And like Michael Levine is another one that comes to mind. He's like the audition coach guru, and he just kind of
Mm,
knows exactly kind of like how to tailor an audition. So again, I really did. I'd make money and I'd spend it
yeah.
because it was my opportunity to really be around these people, take advantage of learning. And I mean that was just that was done because of the home that I lived in and the safe space that I had with my grandma.
Yeah. So again, so many questions. In New York, Broadway acting, all this theater stuff that's going on there. I don't know, like, what's it like to be, I don't know, constantly auditioning for shows, but then I guess if you get in a show, then you wait a bit till the show's over. I don't, what's that life like trying to go from thing to thing to, try to make it work?
Yeah, I mean, there's no clear path. And I think that's what is so difficult for so many that get into it is that, like, the best way that I can say is that you just really have to love it. Like, you can't really look at, like, the outcome. Like, you have to truly adopt the mentality that the journey is the destination, and that, you don't have, like, all the control in the world. But if you find joy in doing what you love, then I think that the path carves itself out for you. And I think you become, a beacon of light when you have like a lot of joy that it brings you. I think people are attracted to that. So for me, it was going to Actors Equity. And for your listeners, that's the Broadway Union. And, I got my Broadway card from doing a children's show, a national tour. And I got back and I really was just auditioning. And, some days like you'd audition more than others, but it was an opportunity again to meet people. So much of going to New York was meeting my people, being around fellow artists, because you never know what you're going to learn. You never know what kind of nugget you're going to get. I think at Actors Equity, I probably heard about Terry Schreiber, so it's like that path was a monumental one in my life. And it was just those days where I was like, okay, well, I don't have work, I don't have a class. Let me just be around like actors, right? And that was the best way to do it. And so I've always kind of said, like, be around your people, always be learning, and just, don't necessarily look at the outcome, look at just the joy that the actual art brings you, and, hope that good things will come out of that.
Yeah. So, and you're in LA now. Spent a lot of time in New York. You've done both theater and film. How did you get into kind of the film industry? And was that like always the goal? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I actually got into the film industry, you could say, because of Terry Schreiber. There was a time where I was kind of getting down on myself, and again, you were all human, right? It was a time in my life where I was really close to a lot of Broadway roles, and I say close to like final callbacks
Mhm.
for quite a few leading roles on Broadway, and just came up a little bit short each time, and sometimes that's harder, believe it or not, than not even being close, to
Yeah.
go in there and to feel like you're probably just not right for the role, but you always just try to, have a great audition. I was just I came so close to tasting it, and I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what made it very difficult. And I think that Terry kind of saw that again, that grandfather mentality, the true lover of actor. And it was a 30-minute conversation where he brought me into his office and it changed my life. And I think about it all the time because of how selfless it was, and the mentality that it was going to probably push me away from being in his class, but it was something that he felt very adamant about in telling me, and it was just so thoughtful the way that he did it. He said, "I've been watching you in class. Like I think that you do the work, you care about the work, you love the art of what you do. I don't want you to get down on yourself. Like, I want you to continue on this path because I believe there is a path for you. And, what do you think about LA? I see a lot of your work and I feel like you could tailor that to, TV and film acting." And it was just this really, really great, incredible, life-changing heart-to-heart conversation where, I kind of got that thought in my head, like maybe I should kind of see what's on the other side. And again, it was the hardest decision of my life. I was again so close to my grandmother, to leave her behind. I think I, saved up a bunch of money, and I think I gave her about a third of what I had at the time just to make sure that she was okay. Because it was a really, really difficult point in my life. But unbeknownst to Terry at that point, right next door to his office, I was taking a TV and film acting class from two of the teachers that taught there, Peter and Diane Miner. And Peter was the director for One Life to Live for, I think, a good decade. And so I was actually, paired together with this girl in an acting class, and she came over to my apartment, grandma's apartment, to rehearse one day. And I'm pulling through the scene. We were actually paired together in a scene from Say Anything, the John Cusack movie, the breakup scene where she gives him the pen, if you know the movie. And I'm fumbling through the scene, and I pull across the call sheet, and I noticed that she had a 540 area code, and I said, where are you from in Virginia? Because I'm from Virginia. And she looked at me, and she said, Front Royal. And I said, excuse me? She said, Front Royal, Virginia. Have you heard of it? And I said, I'm from Front Royal. And she was like, that's impossible. And I said, no, seriously, my dad's the karate guy across from the Main Street Cinema. And I know this person, I know this person. And what about you? And she said, well, my family owns the Apple House, which is a small little Virginia store, country store off the interstate that only somebody in that area would know. Well, Dylan, right on my dresser on 79th and Broadway, I literally said, look at my dresser. And there were three things with the price tag still on them from the Apple House. So it was just kind of kismet at that point. I think my line at that moment in time was, "Well, we've already gotten the breakup out of the way. Are you ready to go out on a date?" And that's when Laura and I started dating. And
Wow.
my girlfriend then, now my wife, but she was a big part of that alignment of, maybe giving me the strength, or the courage to kind of, branch out and to see if LA was going to be part of our journey. Because again, I feel like I've always been like curious to where the path is going to take me. And at that point, like, New York was kind of, in many ways getting me down. It was a tough time in my life. I was struggling with it because my family was there and everything I knew was there, but I just felt like things weren't happening for me in the way that I'd hoped. And the lifestyle was kind of weighing on me. Again, closing bars at 4 and 5 a.m. It's just kind of like tired. I was exhausted, working and for what, and feeling like I was kind of losing my path or my momentum. And so it was just one January where we packed up the car, drove. Actually, we packed up two different apartments. She was living on 87th in Amsterdam. I was on 79th and Broadway. We rented a car. We brought it down to Virginia. We unpacked the car. Her dad gave us another car to drive across the country. We packed everything we could into it. We made it a little kumbaya trip. We stopped different places along the way, including Sedona and the Grand Canyon, and did a lot of reflection, to try to, just feel this out, to see if it was right. And we were so lucky. My wife had a friend that actually she was in a film with through NYU that had a grandfather that had a house that he was, renting out a room in. And he originally was from Brooklyn. He was this sweet Jewish man, and he'd make us matzo ball soup. So it was like I had like a grandfather like figure in a way that like so it made me miss grandma just a little bit less, just a little bit less. And so I feel like it was just that moment where we gave it a few months, and we started to really just kind of feel like we were at home. And I think we looked at each other one day before we, started to look for, a little something a little bit more permanent. And we just said, like, I think this is our home now. And we just kind of both nodded to each other. And again, we've never looked back ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now you're doing the whole TV film thing now, and I want to talk about that, what the life's like, auditioning thing. Maybe to set this up, why don't we talk about the newest role that you're in, Fabian, and you can tell me if I mispronounce that, in Somewhere in Montana. So let's talk about that, and then just kind of like what it's like to be you and to do all the things in the film behind the scenes. So can you tell us about Somewhere in Montana and maybe like how you got connected to the film and all that?
Yeah, it's a great story. I think it's a role that, again, you have to try to adopt this strategy as an actor sometimes. I think it's just a good mentality to have, that, 100% of the roles that are meant for you will find you. And I feel like this is definitely the first time where I've ever heard that, classic phrase and really felt that for Fabian, that he found me. I was actually working in a restaurant in Valencia, California. And, I've always just tried to help out people in the ways that I can, especially fellow actors that, are trying to find their path. And at the time, I had been working with an agent for a while, that, I had a pretty good relationship with. So it wasn't just a new agent. I had a relationship with him. And, my friend Zuzu, her and her husband Kyle were, just both working in the restaurants. They had two kids, now they have three, and they were just really trying to find their way. And she, mentioned trying to find an agent, and I said, "Well, get in touch with my agent, and I'll pass your stuff along, and no promises, but hopefully, maybe he can take you on." And long story short, he did, and it was just really great. And I think actually she might still work with him, which is awesome. But in 2019, both her and her husband were originally from Montana and decided to move home. And so we kind of lost touch for a couple years. They had kind of like tried to get into the film and TV industry in Montana. It's small, but people. And I thought that was really cool of them that they, took the leap to move back home in a way that like I took the leap to come to LA, And so, a couple years passed, and one day she called me up and she said, "Matt, I came across this script written by my friend Brandon, and every time I read one of the lead characters, I see your face." And it was just a really humbling, moment in my life where, again, like I had looked out for her, and she had looked out for me, and it meant a lot to me at the time. It still does. And, I asked her, can I put myself on tape? How should I go about? And she gave me the information, the casting director, and the script, and I just tore through the script like 3 times. Like I just loved the story. It was a big story. It was a story that I felt mattered. It was a story that I felt like gravitated towards me as an actor. And I put myself on tape for it with my acting teacher down here. And I think what was so interesting about that day when I finally put my scene on tape for it was, just my teacher's kind of reaction when I did the scene just once. And he just kind of looked at me and he was like, and I was like, what does that mean? Because now you can do a scene 20 times for an audition and pick the 16th take if you want to. And I only did it once. And he looked at me and he was like, I wouldn't tell you to change anything. Like you have a very clear take on this character and what you want to do with it. And could you make adjustments? Of course you could, but like you have a really clear take. And if we do it, 100 more times, you're just going to lose your instinct. Like this was an instinctual performance, and I would just send it off and see what happens. And so I did, and I sent that one take off, and that's the tough part, right? As an actor, that you have to adopt again, put yourself on tape, get excited about the audition. The audition is the win, and then let it go. Like that's the hard part. And so I let it go. A few weeks went by, and I was reached out to by Jared Brocksterman, who is the local casting director, and he said, we want to set up a producer session with you, with Brandon Smith, the writer director, and Eden Matson, the producer. And so they did. And I just remember that producer session being on a Zoom like this, and it was just really special because I feel like, again, so much of acting is collaborating. It's really serving the material, right? Because you're an actor to serve the director, serve the writer, serve the producers, really serve the crew, because the crew is busting their butt when you finally get to production. And so I think that, that Zoom call for me was just curious. Like I was just so curious. Like I asked a lot of questions. I was very interested in this big story, and I think we only ran the scene maybe once or twice. It really just became like a mentality where we were connecting with each other. And again, it felt like it went really well. And you got to let it go, right? And so. And then a few weeks went by again, and Jared reached out to me one day, and he, said, Matt, there were so many people that auditioned and submitted for this role. I mean, like I think we got over 5,000 submissions. We brought in a few hundred for the role, and a few others to producer session. And unfortunately, we've had to tell all the other actors that they won't be getting the role of Fabian, and you are our Fabian Verdugo. And it just really was a moment of pure elation for me. Obviously, I was confused. I was down, the way that he set it up, but it was really sweet the way that he did it, because I think he was just as excited for me. And it really just meant a lot. And I do remember this moment very vividly of hanging up the phone right afterwards. And this is really just kind of, it showed me my mentality and my respect and love for the craft in that moment. Was the first thought that I had in my head was, okay, Matt, it's time to get to work. Because that's when the work really starts as an actor. It's like, you can be granted a role, and that's how the way I say it, you're granted a role, is something that is a gift in your life. But then you have to go and earn it. It's no different than a football player being drafted, #1 overall, but then making the team, and you got to make it in reps, and you got to show that you're a collaborator, and you got to show like, your stuff. And that's the part of it that I think I've always really shined at, is just the ability to, once I get the role, because auditioning is almost a different skill set in many ways.
Yeah.
It's like, it's inorganic. I'm shooting it a lot of times in front of this wall that I've got over here, and you got to make some quick choices and things like that. And it's fun in different ways. But when you are finally given the role, that's when you really can do kind of your process. Like that's when you can really adopt your own strategies. And so many of those have been given to me over the years by great teachers like Terry Schreiber. And now I adopt different processes for different characters. This is the first character that I ever truly fell in love with. So it made sense to go method, the Lee Strasberg, method. And it was really just about really falling into the character and becoming the character and understanding the differences that we had because there was so much crossover between Fabian and I. And again, because of that, it really just brought me so much joy in, crafting this role of a lifetime.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, how does this work in the film industry? So, you officially get the role. How much time is there between that and you actually start shooting? And how do you like? What's that process like before you get on set? Memorizing lines, getting into the character. Like, what was that like for you to prepare to shoot the movie?
Yeah, well, I mean, the honest answer to that is it's always different, right? I mean, sometimes like you're in a TV or a quick turnaround kind of shoot, where you're getting the role and maybe you're showing up like literally the same week, right? To start, and there might not be that time to, connect with the the powers that be, right? The other creatives, the director, the writer, so forth. But for this one, I had nothing but time, which was a gift and a curse in many ways. It was a gift because the film did get pushed back a year, so I had basically almost a year and a half to
Oh, wow.
really dive into this character. And I think for me, like maybe more of a gift because it really gave me the ability for uh, one of my first leading roles in a big film was to just really enjoy that process and kind of go back to the basics and to try things and to tinker and to do what I love to do, which is write backstories and create like a foundation for the character. But then it really does boil up to the point where like you really are itching to like give that character away because of how much work you've done on it. But it got pushed back a year because of needing a little bit more time. We had gotten Graham McTavish attached at that point, so he wasn't available the year before, but he was available the next year. And I think it was great in many ways. Personally, for me, it was a real gift in my life. I lost my stepfather, and he was a dad to me, and so it was a really painful time in my life. He actually passed away a few days before I was supposed to arrive on set, and I was a wreck.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
Yeah.
for me, it gave me the ability really to kind of just kind of heal, but also kind of adopt him into my performance. And I think that's what artists do sometimes is we utilize our own pain to pay honor to those that we love. And I did that. In many big ways in the film, including one scene that actually is a ceremony scene that the Native Americans do, which is a giving away ceremony to let other people live on, ironically, after a year of grieving. They grieve and they grieve hard for a year. And just the synchronicity between me and this practice was me grieving hard for a year and finding solace in this character of Fabian and this story that Brandon Smith had created. So I grieved and I grieved hard, and I did a celebration of life for Chaz. And again, he was such a big part of who I am because he was a chef and he loved food like I love acting, and I think he taught me so much of the passion of just being in love with something that you love, right? And not apologizing for it. And I think because of that, like I found ways to adopt him into my performance and to keep him there with me. And that scene, I'm wearing a Tree of Life pendant. and it happens to be like the biggest scene of the film. I have a 10-page scene with Graham shortly thereafter, and Chaz's ashes are in that Tree of Life pendant. And so, I kept him close with me. I tried to, make him proud in any way that I could, and it just really was a gift for me that I got an extra year to process that and to celebrate him and to honor him. And I feel like that is, in a way, like just kind of the gift of this film, why it has kind of stayed with me in many ways and will stay with me for the rest of my life, is because of the extraordinary people that Brandon put together in this cast. And again, we really did. I can't stress this enough. Like, we became a family. Like, the cast and the crew, we were interchangeable. We would go on hikes together. We would get our meals together. And we really couldn't get enough of each other. And I think that is because of the ecosystem that the producers and the director put for us to have the space to be together. And I think that you really do. You see that in the finished product of this film. It's a family film, and it's an important film. And I think we realized pretty early on that this was a story that was bigger than all of us, and we were going to tell it proudly, and we were going to use our personal experiences and our hurt and our pain and whatever we had to pour it into this beautiful story that we were all telling together.
Yeah, that's a great story. And obviously, speaking of character development, part of that is a script. You mentioned a 10 pager. I'm curious. I mean, what's your process like for memorizing a script? And I'm also curious too. Maybe it depends on like a show, movie, how much maybe directors trust you. I'm always wondering, like, okay, they give you the script, here's the lines, but then how much flexibility do they give you as the actor to adjust or to say things differently versus what they say? But let me start with that. Like, what's memorizing the script like for you? What's your process?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I try to learn the lines as unemotionally as I can, almost like I'm studying, just to get them in, to get them, available to me, but not over attach a performance to them, because I like that part of the mechanism to stay as free as possible. So a lot of times I do it quietly, where I just, write it down over and over again. I try not to speak it out loud until I feel like I have a good, kind of sense of it. And then I will, do a little bit of role play, right, where I'll try out a scene, either with my wife, or there's great apps like Rehearsal 2 is a great one, where you can kind of recite it back to yourself. But you don't really want to do that too much, because again, you are acting with yourself or acting with somebody that isn't ultimately going to be your scene partner. So I really like to keep it accessible, but not make too many choices about it that aren't based in just the character development. And again, I think that what that does is, when you finally do get to the day where you're with your friend Graham, and you're doing this 10-page scene that you've had long conversations about with him, you feel free enough to understand that you don't even know what's going to happen. And that's, I think, the power and the real craft of acting, is that you've done all the work, but then at that point you don't even know what's going to happen. You almost lose yourself in it, in that moment. And I think that's kind of where you really start to play, right? Actors are called players, right? And so I think that's when it becomes fun, is when you've done all of the craft, whatever your process is. Like I said, for me, it's backstory, it's journaling, it's writing down the lines, it's having them be accessible, but not making too many choices of them, making the character and the behavior kind of in that moment, kind of interpret what that reaction is going to be, because so much of it is listening. A lot of acting is between the words. It's not just on the words. So I look at lines as, you have to keep them accessible. That's part of the work that we do, but you don't want to make too many decisions about them, because then you're not free to kind of play in the moment. So yeah, those are kind of the ways that I adopt my strategy as an actor. is because I always want to remain as free as possible in the moment. So that way, when I'm with a great actor like a Graham McTavish or a Michelle Hurd, I can just really be working off of what they're giving me and reacting to it in real time and letting their words land on me and their feelings land on me, and that's when you're truly in the moment as an actor.
How common is it? A lot of times you hear people be like, "This famous scene in this movie was unscripted, like it wasn't in the script," and I'm always kind of curious. I mean, is it pretty normal to kind of go off the cuff a little bit, or is it mostly, or maybe it depends on the director, I don't know, or are they mostly like, "No, you will say the lines that we told you to say." Like, how much freedom do they give you, or maybe at least somewhere in Montana, how much freedom did you have to kind of adjust as you felt necessary?
Yeah, I mean, it really does. It goes back to it just depends on the set. It depends on the writer, the director. Um, I feel like for this project, I definitely think that I stayed pretty much on script. I felt like the words because again, Brandon was the writer and the director, so I felt like I wanted to respect the character development. We would get on Zoom calls like this, and we would go scene by scene by scene, and so I felt like it was my opportunity to show my love and respect for the words that he had put on the page. So I didn't divert from that, too much, if at all. But that, that there were certain times where I feel like, certain characters did, just because they felt like they could. But again, it was a conversation that they would have with Brandon. It
Yeah.
wasn't that they were going rogue. It was that they just felt like they had done their work as an actor and that, specific to Graham, he had spent a lot of time with Montana ranchers, and Montana ranchers are very succinct. They're very direct. It's yep, 23. Yep, okay. Dinner at 6:30. Okay, I'll see you there. So it's very that, and so a lot of times, he felt like John might be saying too much, and Graham is just a true craftsman of subtlety and nuance as an actor. And I think that's kind of what made our dynamic performance work so well together, which was really kind of a risk on my part because again I'm one of the two major outsiders in the film, and so I have, in many ways, and even the editor said, like the biggest arc of this story, because I am the outsider, and I'm understanding their world because I'm brought into their world. And so I, gave myself the freedom, and again I knew it was a risk to play Fabian big because I felt him big. I felt like he was a big character. I felt like he was passionate. I felt like he cared more about others than he cared about himself. Don't get that confused with being a diva or being over the top. Like, he was going to fight for others in the ways that sometimes he wouldn't fight for himself. These are his people. These are his family. So I felt like because of that, we're put in positions where we're fighting for our dreams in life. Like, sometimes we are a little bit larger than life, right? And so that was the freedom that I gave myself, and Brandon gave me that. Like, again, Brandon gave so much of his actors, like he'd even say, like, I'm not the actor. Like, he gave us the responsibility to be the actors. And if we felt that we, needed something, or we needed something tweaked or adjusted, or we needed to say less or we needed to say more, Brandon would give it to us. And that is rare. That's what I'll say. That is rare, but I think it was built into the tapestry of just kind of who he is as an artist, is that he gave all of us the ability to uniquely bring ourselves to the character and trust, the work that we had done as an actor and how we had viewed the characters and how we were bringing ourselves to it, or whatever methodology we were using. And he knew that I was, going a full method approach. I lost 25 pounds for the role. I hired a nutrition coach to do it very safely, and I wanted to make sure it was healthy. But I hired a great team, a husband, wife, Nathan and Jennifer DeTracy, and we because I felt like Fabian was one of those people that just missed meals. Like, he was somebody that, again, like, didn't think about himself in the same way. Like, he was very driven, he was very focused, and sometimes that means that you're not taking care of yourself in the best way possible. And so for me, it really made me feel like I was in the body of the character, which was very important for me because, even my stature right now as Matt talking to you, if you were talking to Fabian, like he was more upright. He was, more delicate, but strong at the same time. And so I felt like for me, I found ways to give myself every fail safe possible, so that I could craft this really big, passionate character the way that I knew best. And Brandon was a big proponent of that. So, I give full credit to him as an artist because it is rare. You can be on certain sets where it's not like that, and you don't have a lot of time to be with your fellow actors, but we did, and I think that is a real amazing thing, and you really see it in the final product of the film.
You mentioned, method acting, losing weight, really getting to the role. As viewers, all we ever see is the final product. I'm curious. My assumption here is, probably one of the most fun parts is actually being on set, filming the stuff. For you, and it's probably different, based on personality, wiring. What is like some of the hardest things for you when it comes to, producing a film? The things that like maybe most feel like work. What's the hardest things for you to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I don't know. I mean, I love it so much that I understand the work, but I just enjoy the work so much. But I think that there are so many challenges. I mean, I think that, what I try to do as an actor within my job, because my job was an actor in this production. And as I move on to other things, hopefully I'll be producing more, right? With my wife, with my production company. So then it becomes a different dynamic. But for this one, I'll speak to being an actor. It really was. It was, just doing all of this work and then letting go of it. But luckily enough, I've had such great teachers. I've built this foundation and my own process in my life where I've learned to let go. I've learned to mess up. And I think that is something that took time in college. I remember one of my great acting teachers who is still a dear friend of mine, Kevin Connell, saying like, and he said it in a really sweet way, and I knew what he meant, and he didn't mean it as a compliment. It was direct, but he said, you know, you're an A acting student, and you need to learn to F up basically. You need to learn how to be messy. And the second I stopped worrying about getting grades as an actor, the second I started like worrying about making it perfect, was I really feel like the moment where I unlocked myself as an actor, because it gave me the freedom to just really not judge myself and not judge my work, and really just enjoy it, because I think so much of acting is just enjoying it. So I think I'd almost learned that process beforehand, but when you're in the moment where you are carrying a big weight of this story, you do something that I'm very proud that I did. You rely on other actors that have been doing it for so long. And again, Graham and I, like, we became fast friends. He checked up on me like a couple months ago when we were having the fires right around my area. He's the first person in my life that called me mate, which is a sign of Scottish camaraderie, which meant a lot to me, and the way that he did it, it was the last time, he got in the car and he looked right at me and he said, "I'll see you, mate." And it meant a lot because it was like we had told a story together, and we had those conversations, and we had done it, together. And it just meant a lot. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from Michelle Hurd, who has become a big sister in my life, and, is just a true lover and fighter for actors. She's on the SAG board. And some of the conversations that we had, like, are things that, like, I will hold dear for the rest of my life. And I think that, like, I've just gotten And I think I've always been this way where I just really do love the relationships. I say this all the time with Summer in Montana, but I already feel like I've won with this film because of the relationships that it's brought me, because of how much it's taught me and how much it's given me in my life. And I, gave Brandon this really wonderful sign made out of barnwood for the premiere, and it's got all the carvings and etchings. You can find it on my Instagram of just the different sets, and it's got the title Somewhere in Montana. Well, my character Fabian has a nervous tick, and he rolls an Irish penny every time he's worried, and it's his grandfather's, and it's like kind of his worry stone. Well, Brandon gave me two of them when we started production, and when I gave him this sign, there's a little carved out circle with a spot to put the Irish penny, and I didn't put it in there yet. But when I gave him the sign, I gave him one of the Irish pennies back, and it was a way to again just show him my deep appreciation for what I said on the back of the sign was thank you for the role of a lifetime, Fabian Verdugo, Matt Drago, and it's just this amazing thing that when you're an actor and you're grateful, you're not trying to be, the greatest. You're not trying to be the best. I don't even know what that means. You're really honestly just trying to be a collaborator and someone that brings your self to a project and brings your joy to a project and appreciates every part of it and is a team player and wants to serve the work and serve the material and tell a great story. And again, that brings me back to my childlike state. There is just nothing better than telling a great story.
Yeah. Is it hard for you being in film and TV to watch movies and TV? Is it hard for you not to judge like that camera angle, that acting direction that they went with, or are you like, no, I can relax and watch it? What's it like for someone who's a professional watching others do it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind watching my work because I feel like it's part of, the process, and it's being proud of what I was able to do. I will say that the first time that you watch a film, fortunately or unfortunately, I do think that you are, as an actor, more gravitated towards, your work as the actor. And then as you watch the movie over and over again, and I keep it special. I've only seen Somewhere in Montana now four times as I speak to you. One was in Montana, one was at a screening that we did in Palm Springs, another one was a screening that I did right over here in Newhall, California, and then one time with my wife and my dog at home. And so, I keep it special because now I feel like that I'm watching it, the third and fourth time. I see the collective story that we've all told, and I see different elements of it each time, and remembering like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we got that shot. Like there was a rainstorm coming in, or I can't believe that Jason, our gaffer, was able to light that scene that way because it was bright out and he made it look like it was the dead of night, and he made that light look like it was the moon shining through the barn window. And just like appreciation of all of these masters of craft is something that I think I have truly gravitated towards with film is that it's just a collective piece. And, whether you're in front of the camera, behind the camera, it doesn't matter. Like you're part of this team. And I think that is something that I've carried on through Fabian and what Fabian has taught me in my next chapter, which is, telling a feature film with my wife who has already written a Christmas movie. And it takes place in our little hometown in Front Royal, Virginia. And it's going to be this full circle moment where we, again, give back because that's something that we want to do with film is give it back to little small parts of the country that feel like they don't have a voice because I feel like that's such a big part of the dissonance that we're feeling in our country right now is that. And so that's one of the motifs with our production company, Dragon Hunter Productions, is, bringing little productions back to these pockets of the country that feel like they don't have a voice. And what better place to start than the place that we're
Okay.
from? And I do.
Yeah.
I feel like you you find the joy that it brings the town and the people around it because it becomes their film too. It's not your film, it's everybody's film. And Brandon taught me that, and this story taught me that. This production taught me that, and Fabian taught me that. Because again, it's no different than what Fabian wanted to do. He wanted to tell big stories, and he felt like he was running out of time, and that this one was an important legacy piece for him. Film is legacy. It lives on past us. And so it's something that, again, when you adopt a method approach to acting, sometimes you get the gift of carrying parts of that character with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. You mentioned watching the film 4 times. I'm curious how this works. So obviously you have the script, you're there filming it, but I'm assuming as an actor, like you don't really know everything that's going to make the film, what the final product's going to look like. How surprising is it for you to like watch somewhere in Montana or anything you've done and realize, oh, I didn't know it was going to end that way, or that's interesting what they did. Like, do you really have an idea of how it's going to go, or is there a lot of surprises when you watch it yourself for the first time?
Yeah, there's always surprises because there's three different, films. There's the film that you plan, there's the film that you shoot, and then there's the film that you cut, right? And so John Shimke, our incredibly talented editor, with our incredible composers. I mean, that's another huge part of it. The Livisays, Nolan and Jason, the score that they gave this film was special. So yeah, I mean, when I'm putting these scenes down, I'm in a quiet barn with Graham, or I'm in a car with Michelle, or I'm around the barn or the house or whatever it is. There's none of that imagery, right? There's none of that color correction. There's none of the elements in post production that have even happened that I'm even aware of at that point. So how could I be aware of what it's going to look like? And I do think that that's the joy of it, is that again, you start to see other masters take that, footage that you've worked so hard for, and then, chip away at it. And there are just amazing moments of joy where I'm like, oh wow, that music just fits so well there, and like I couldn't have seen that moment happen so perfectly, because again, you're within yourself at that point, and you're with the other actors. But the finished product is kind of why I feel like actors and creatives love to celebrate,
Yeah.
and again, I understand that a lot of our industry is forward facing. They see the celebrations, they see the red carpets, and who's not going to take your wife to a wonderful event, and celebrate. But we get into it for the storytelling. We love it for the long hours and for the ability to be around our fellow creatives and to enjoy the day to day of it. I mean, again, like those days in Montana, those 6 weeks that I spent, like changed my life. And I think that that is something that like I will carry with me forever. But now to know that it's our collective film that we all made together, and that I'm watching the end credits and I know every single person's name on those credits is why I love indie films so much, because it's such this tight knit group of people that sacrifice and truly sacrifice. I mean, I know stories of sacrifice within this film, in terms of, raising money and figuring out how to make things work that really truly make it inspiring, to hopefully do the next one, and to hopefully work with the same people again, because they've brought you so much joy. And so, yeah, no, I just, I'm so appreciative of the final cut. I'm so appreciative of our editors and our composers and all the people that put so much work into that final cut of the film. But yeah, I just I love watching the final product, because again, that's the honor that now the post production crew has put into how the film will live on forever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I think too, obviously one of the benefits of landing roles like this is, at least I'm assuming, is the how it might open doors in the future for other opportunities. I don't like, is there like a dream role that you wish that would come your way one day, or maybe a type of role that you're like, hey, I would love to perform in this way or act as this character in the future? Is it like a dream for you?
I think because so much of my mentality is relationships, I go back to, me growing up and just admiring the greats like Francis Ford Coppola and Scorsese and Pacino and De Niro. And I think so much of my dream would be to get to be with them and to tell a story with them, because of just how much I know they love the craft and how much they've learned along the way, and how much they've inspired me, and made me the actor that I am today. Again, that's what you hope to do as an actor is, lay enough good things behind that hopefully it will inspire people to keep creating and keep people feeling and being in touch with their emotions, right? Because I always feel like we're better when we're in touch with our emotions, right? And we're feeling things and we're seeing things and we're available, right, emotionally. And so much of me growing up and looking at the beautiful nuances of De Niro and Pacino and the fire that existed in them as actors is inspiring to me. And then, I always say this, but like the relationship between a director and an actor is just truly one of the most intimate relationships that exists on this planet, because again, they see things outside of yourself, and it becomes again this service to the material. You're trying to find it together, and it really gets me emotional because it's so beautiful. So to get to be on a set with a Scorsese or a Coppola or one of the people that I admire would be amazing, because it would be almost just a dream to me in just getting to again be around people that have crafted and shaped me as an actor and an artist.
Yeah. Well, at least in the short term, Matt, I'm curious. You mentioned the production company a few times, the film, the stuff you're working on with maybe back to Virginia. What's coming up for you? Like, what's next? What are the things you're working on that you're excited about these days?
Yeah, auditioning. I just signed with a new agent, HRI talent, Tanya Kleckner, and I've got a great manager, Richard John Martin over at Ignite Talent Management. And these are people that like I'm relying on to get me in the rooms right now. This is a big moment for me to again utilize a break or an opportunity in my career to keep telling stories, which is what I've always wanted to do. And so what's great is that they're on the business side and they want me to stay on the creative side, and that's as an actor, is we're getting back to hopefully a better sense of normal. We had one of the worst natural disasters in LA in the history of the city, with the wildfires, and we had multiple strikes last year. And so, there's a lot of unknowns with our industry right now, but I just hope that they can get me in the doors that I need to be getting into right now, and that I can showcase my work to the casting directors and the directors and producers that can see what I'm about, and now see a film that I have a leading role in, and see how I can carry a production. And then again, the word of mouth too is really great, where you learn that this actor is a great collaborator and he'll bring a lot of joy and optimism to your set, and that's a big part of it too, because you're spending a lot of time with these people. So you want people around you that are part of the team, that really truly care about the collective piece, that aren't bigger than any other part. And I look at that way, because I mean, I was 2 on the call sheet this time. Maybe I'll be 22 on the call sheet next time. It doesn't matter to me. It's about the relationships. It's about being part of something that's bigger than myself. That's kind of the mentality that I've always had as an actor. So yeah, that's basically my lane as an actor. And then as a producer, it's collaborating and collaborating with someone I love, and there's nothing better than that. And my wife has won a couple awards for this Christmas movie that we want to bring back to Front Royal, and she's actually one of the 5 writers in Project Involve, which is a fellowship with Film Independent, which is the Independent Spirit Awards, which she got to go to a few weeks ago, which was really special. And there's some big things happening in her career too, and I'm just so proud of her, because she was a New York actor like me. She went to NYU Tisch, but a few years ago she, really decided that she loved writing, and it was right around the time where we were all inside all the time with with COVID, right? And so it was an opportunity for her to dive deep into another creative field, and now she's blown up. She's won Austin Film Festival's Best Podcast Script, which was a big deal. And it's just perpetuated, just this really cool alliance with me, kind of more in the producer actor vein, and her in the writer and maybe even director vein, because I think there's a great relationship between the two of those where you put it on the page, but then you articulate it in production. So I'm just very looking forward to staying in my lane as an actor and continuing to put good auditions out there and continue to be joyous about the work. And at the same time, collaborating with my wife and hopefully getting a feature film back to the town that we're both from.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, Matt, man, thanks for the time and kind of showing us behind the scenes all the things that you're doing, what it's like to be in the industry that you're in. If people want to follow up with you, find somewhere in Montana, kind of you online socials, where can they go to kind of see all the things you're up to?
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Dylan. This has been just a really rewarding conversation. And as I said, even before we started the interview, this part becomes part of my journey, because we only get to tell our stories like, on screen for maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours. But I really like people to know what I'm about too as an actor.
Yeah.
So thank you for giving me the platform to do that today. As far as social media, I stick to one. You can
There you
find
go.
me on you can find me on Instagram at Matt Drago, Mattdrago, at Matt Drago. From there, I've got my link tree. It's got my actor website, mattdrago.com. It's got my production company website, dragonhunterproductions.com. It's also got my IMDb if you want to look up my past and future projects. So give me a follow there, and you'll be in the know in what's happening in my life and my career as an artist.
Awesome. And we'll link to all that in the show notes so you guys can kind of see what Matt's doing and follow up with them. Hey, Matt, thanks for the time and thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Dylan. I appreciate it.